Imagine opening your eyes and discovering that the world you know might not be real. That your memories, your friends, even your very identity could be part of a program, a simulation, or a dream designed by someone else. Philip K. Dick didn't just write about that possibility, he lived it. In his mind, reality was a mirror that constantly cracked, revealing glimpses of other worlds. For years, the writer was haunted by a feeling he couldn't ignore, the certainty that something or someone was manipulating reality. It wasn't paranoia, it was a revelation. In his visions, he saw symbols, encoded messages, hidden patterns woven into everyday life. An entity, an unknown intelligence, seemed to be communicating with him, showing him fragments of a truth the rest of us could not see. His work became a map to that invisible territory, a catalogue of parallel worlds, fractured identities, and minds trapped within false realities. But the more he wrote, the thinner the line grew between fiction and his own existence. What if the worlds he described in his novels weren't pure imagination, but memories leaking in from the other side? His legacy now stretches onward, warning those who dare to look. Blade Runner, Total Recall, Minority Report, The Man in the High Castle, all emerged from his obsession with a universe that might be programmed, edited, or simply wrong. This is the story of the writer who believed he had awakened from the simulation. Welcome to the universe of Philip K. Dick. On December 16th, 1928, in Chicago, Illinois, Philip Kindred Dick was born alongside his twin sister Jane. However, the happiness was short-lived. Just a few weeks later, Jane died of malnutrition, and that first loss would mark Philip's existence forever. From a very young age, he expressed a persistent feeling that a part of him had been trapped on another plane. And later he would claim that his life was a search to reunite with his twin. That early trauma became an obsession, the seed of his fractured worlds, his doubles, and those parallel realities that would later fill his novels. Dick's family was not wealthy. His father, Joseph Edgar Dick, worked as a government employee but abandoned the family when Philip was 5 years old, leaving his mother, Dorothy Kindred, alone to care for him. The family moved several times in search of financial stability, living in California and Washington. These constant relocations, emotional instability, and material scarcity left their mark. Philip grew up in a world where reality seemed fragile, shifting, sometimes hostile. His only refuge was reading. From a young age, he became passionate about literary classics and developed an early interest in science fiction. During his university years, he immersed himself in philosophy, Gnostic theology, and metaphysics. He was fascinated by Plato and Kant and began questioning the nature of reality and consciousness, but he eventually dropped out, dissatisfied with what he considered mere shadows on the wall. In 1952, Planet Stories magazine published Beyond Lies the Wub, Philip K. Dick's first short story, in which a crew member of a spaceship buys a wub, a large pig-like creature, from a Martian villager. The ship's captain proposes eating it, but the animal, using its telepathic powers, replies that perhaps the matter deserves some discussion.
When I purchased my first published story, somebody said to me, "Do you read that kind of stuff?" And I said, "Madam, I not only read it, I write it." And people would say to me, "Well, why don't you write something serious?" Nevertheless, I did as well as I could. I wrote the most profound, the most imaginative novel I could, and just floated it out into the world and hoped that eventually it would receive an audience.
Between 1952 and 1955, Dick published more than 45 short stories in science fiction magazines such as Fantastic Universe, Planet Stories, Fantastic Story Magazine, If Magazine, and Astounding Science Fiction. His early stories already revealed a constant theme: doubt about what is real, systems that manipulate the mind, and the fragility of human identity. Many of them would later inspire films and TV series. In 1953, he published Second Variety. In a post-apocalyptic future, after a devastating nuclear war, humanity faces an unexpected enemy, murderous robots known as claws. originally created to eliminate enemy soldiers. But these machines rapidly evolve, developing new versions that imitate humans, capable of infiltrating survivor groups undetected. Trapped in a world of deception, paranoia, and betrayal, the survivors no longer know whom to trust. That same year, Imposter appeared, a story in which Spence Oldham, a key scientist in a military research program, discovers that he might actually be an android created by the enemy, programmed to detonate a bomb and destroy the city from within. Trapped between his own humanity and the possibility of being a weapon, Oldham struggles to prove his identity as time runs out. In 1953, he wrote Paycheck. In this story, Michael Jennings is a high-tech engineer who accepts a secret job for a powerful corporation. In exchange, he agrees to have his memory of the project erased, and at the end, he receives his payment, not in money, but in a collection of seemingly worthless objects. Soon, he discovers that each of these items is, in fact, the key to saving his life, protecting himself from conspiracies, and manipulating future events. Dick was largely self-taught. He learned to write by reading voraciously, copying structures, techniques, and styles from other authors, and adapting them to his own voice. He analyzed stories, imitated, and experimented. He developed a unique method: write fast, revise later, and produce relentlessly. In 1954, he published The Golden Man, set in a future where human society is at war with dangerous mutants. One of them is a special young man, golden-skinned, physically perfect, and gifted with the ability to foresee the future. His mere existence threatens humanity's control, as he can anticipate every move of his pursuers and evade all attempts at capture. That same year, he wrote Adjustment Team. The story follows Ed Fletcher, an ordinary man who discovers that the reality he knows is not fixed. A mysterious adjustment team works behind the scenes, manipulating everyday events to keep a greater plan in motion. When Fletcher accidentally witnesses these agents at work, he realizes that human freedom may be an illusion, and that everything we believe to be certain is being controlled by invisible forces. The 1950s were harsh for Dick. Science fiction was considered cheap literature, and Hugh wrote for pulp magazines earning only a few dollars per story. He lived on the edge of poverty, writing 3 or 4 stories a week just to pay the rent. To stay awake and productive, he began using amphetamines, like many writers of the time. As he himself said, "I was writing 3 novels at once. Without the pills, I couldn't have done it."
Science fiction is considered to be something for adolescents, for high school kids, and for disturbed people in general to read in America. The field, science fiction, is just a genre there, ranked at the level of nurse romance publications. We are considered at the bottom rung.
In 1955, he published his first novel, Solar Lottery, a dystopia in which power is distributed by chance and survival depends on a roll of the dice. It was one of the first works to break away from the technological optimism that dominated science fiction at the time, anticipating the paranoid and dystopian vision that would later define the cyberpunk genre. Although it wasn't a commercial success, the novel caught the attention of the science fiction community for its blend of social critique and futuristic speculation, helping to establish Dick within the pulp scene of the 1950s. In 1956, he published The Minority Report, where crimes are prevented before they occur thanks to the precogs, beings capable of foreseeing the future. The police can arrest people before they commit a crime. John Anderton, head of the pre-crime unit, discovers that the system has predicted that he himself will commit a murder. Now he must face the paradox of trusting a system that controls justice while fighting to prove his innocence. The story explores paranoia, predestination, and the ethical dilemmas of controlling other people's fates, questioning to what extent human freedom can exist in an apparently predetermined world. During this decade, he also wrote the novels The World Jones Made, The Man Who Japed, Eye in the Sky, The Cosmic Puppets, and Time Out of Joint. In the latter, we meet Regal Gum, who lives a quiet life in a small 1950s American town. His daily routine consists of solving a strange puzzle contest in the local newspaper. But gradually, he begins to notice odd things. Objects disappearing, and being replaced with tags bearing his name, people behaving as if they were following a script, and inconsistencies in the world around him. As he tries to make sense of it, Regal uncovers an impossible truth. His reality is a carefully constructed simulation, and his role within it is far more important than he ever imagined. In this novel, Philip K. Dick weaves paranoia, fragmented reality, and social manipulation into a story that questions everything we take for real. A theme that would later inspire films such as The Truman Show. The 1960s were an intense, chaotic, and deeply unstable period in Philip K. Dick's life, but also one of his most creatively productive. He wrote relentlessly, immersed in worlds he could no longer clearly separate from fiction. He relied on amphetamines to stay awake. His marriages fell apart. His relationships were tense and fleeting, and his financial situation remained precarious. From his desk emerged parallel worlds, desolate cities, and conspiracies that defied reason. In 1962, he published The Man in the High Castle. In a chilling twist of fate, the Nazis have won World War II. The United States is now divided. The West Coast is under the control of the Japanese Empire, the East Coast under the power of the Third Reich, and between them lies a thin neutral zone separating two empires on the brink of conflict. Among the citizens trying to survive under this new order, merchants, spies, refugees, and opportunists, a forbidden book circulates, a novel describing an impossible world, one in which the Allies won the war. As the characters read this book and begin to question their own existence, the boundaries between reality and fiction begin to blur. That double mirror of reality marked the beginning of Philip K. Dick's obsession with overlapping worlds, simulations, and the falsification of history, themes he would continue to develop in his later novels. With The Man in the High Castle, Dick won the Hugo Award for Best Novel, the most prestigious award in the genre, placing him for the first time at the center of literary science fiction. It was at that moment that critics began to take him seriously. Dick confessed that he wrote the novel after experiencing a vision in which he saw two overlapping realities and hearing voices that dictated to him details of an alternate history. It was the first sign that his mind was beginning to fracture. Between 1963 and 1965, Dick wrote some of his most ambitious and complex works: The Game Players of Titan, The Simulacra, The Penultimate Truth, Martian Timeslip, and The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch. These novels mark his transition from socially and politically oriented science fiction toward a philosophical and psychological exploration of identity, perception, and the divine. He began to obsess over questions like what is real and who decides what is real. In 1966, he wrote We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, the short story that inspired the 1990 film Total Recall. In it, Douglas Quayle is an ordinary man who dreams of visiting Mars. To fulfill his wish, he goes to a company that offers memory implants, experiences designed to make clients feel they've lived adventures that never actually happened. But during the procedure, it's discovered that Quayle already has erased memories of real missions to Mars, secrets even he doesn't remember. Suddenly, his ordinary life becomes a landscape of conspiracies, danger, and doubt. Which memories are real and which are implanted? Then, in 1968, came Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, the novel later adapted into the film Blade Runner, 1982, directed by Ridley Scott. In a world devastated by nuclear war, humans coexist with androids nearly indistinguishable from themselves. Rick Deckard, a bounty hunter, is tasked with retiring rogue androids who rebel or escape to Earth. But as he hunts them down, he begins to question the difference between human and machine, the nature of empathy, and even the very reality surrounding him. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is a story about identity, morality, and the thin line separating the real from the artificial, where Philip K. Dick compels us to ask, what truly makes us human? In 1969, Philip K. Dick published Ubik, one of his most original works. In a near future, humanity has developed the ability to preserve the minds of the dead in states of half-life, where their consciousness can continue to interact with the living. Joe Chip, an employee at a company that manages these technologies, becomes trapped in a world where reality begins to unravel. Objects and environments regress in time, memory and perception grow unstable, and the boundaries between the living and the dead blur. Amid this chaos appears Ubik, a mysterious product that seems to be the only tool capable of protecting them and restoring some coherence to the world. Ubik had a deep and lasting impact on both science fiction and contemporary literature, considered a work far ahead of its time and cementing Dick's reputation as one of the most innovative and visionary authors of his generation. In 1971, Philip K. Dick experienced an event that would mark his personal life and deeply influence his later work. His home in Berkeley was broken into by intruders. During the robbery, Dick was threatened and beaten. Though he survived, he lost part of his belongings, including important documents and manuscripts. The incident heightened his sense of paranoia and distrust toward the outside world, intensifying his obsession with conspiracies, surveillance, and hidden realities.
Anybody like me who grew up and was part of the Berkeley counterculture became a marked man during the Nixon administration. It is impossible to tell how much of our fears were justified. I mean, there were illegal entries. My house was broken into, my files were blown open, my papers were stolen. But what they were looking for, I don't know. What they thought I was doing, I don't know. I don't even know if it was the government. The fact that I was an intellectual and a writer only made me more suspicious in their eyes. You've got to take into account that in the United States, to be an intellectual, to be a writer, is to wear a sign on your back saying, I am an enemy of the state.
In 1974, he published Flow My Tears, The Policeman Said. The story follows Jason Taverner, a famous television host, who wakes up one day to find that his identity has completely vanished. No one recognizes him. There are no records of his existence, and his fame has been erased from the world. As he tries to understand what has happened, Taverner becomes entangled in an authoritarian society where surveillance and total control are the norm. Paranoia surrounds him, and every interaction seems to conceal danger and betrayal. The novel received the John W. Campbell Memorial Award in 1975, recognizing its excellence in science fiction. Its focus on paranoia, identity, and alienation influenced later writers and inspired numerous cinematic and television adaptations exploring dystopian and authoritarian worlds. That same year, Philip K. Dick had an experience that would change him forever. He took a prescribed painkiller for physical pain which, combined with the stimulants he regularly used to sustain his writing pace, triggered a temporary psychotic episode. During this episode, Dick experienced vivid hallucinations and delusions, some of which he perceived as metaphysical revelations or messages from higher entities. This incident would lead him to write his Valis trilogy, where he explored the interaction between the divine, the conspiratorial, and the human mind. During the following months, Dick experienced visions, auditory hallucinations, lucid dreams, and a torrent of ideas. He wrote endlessly, trying to record everything he perceived, leaving behind more than 8,000 pages of notes, now known as the Exegesis of Philip K. Dick. In those writings, he analyzed his experiences from every possible angle: philosophical, religious, psychological, even scientific. In one of these visions, Dick saw the inside of his newborn son's body and sensed that something was wrong. Alarmed, he took the child to the hospital, where doctors confirmed that the baby indeed had a dangerous hernia. In 1977, he published A Scanner Darkly. The story follows Bob Arctor, an undercover cop in a near-future society ravaged by drug addiction. His mission is to investigate the distribution of a powerful substance, known as Substance D. But things spiral out of control when Arctor becomes addicted to the very drug he's supposed to fight and is also assigned to spy on himself. His identity begins to fracture between the cop and the addict, blurring the lines between reality and hallucination, duty and delusion. The novel was adapted into a film in 2006, directed by Richard Linklater and starring Keanu Reeves. It was made using digital rotoscoping, blending reality and animation, just as Dick might have imagined. Philip K. Dick's final years were marked by physical and mental fragility. After decades of drug abuse, insomnia and stress, his health deteriorated, yet his mind remained restless, constantly exploring alternate realities and writing without pause. In 1981, he published Valis, one of his most personal and complex works. Directly inspired by his mystical experiences of 1974, it merged autobiography, theology, and science fiction. In it, Dick delved into his obsessions with divinity, madness, and the possibility that reality itself might be an illusion manipulated by a higher intelligence. It was followed by The Divine Invasion, a cosmic reinterpretation of biblical themes that continued the spiritual thread of Valis. Soon after came The Transmigration of Timothy Archer, a more grounded and philosophical reflection on faith, loss, and the search for meaning, featuring characters inspired by his friends and by himself. This trilogy, known as the Valis trilogy, represented his final attempt to reconcile science fiction with mystical revelation, madness with transcendence. In 1982, Dick was working on several projects and enjoying the anticipation surrounding the upcoming film Blade Runner, based on his novel. After years of being overlooked by the mainstream, he was finally witnessing his vision of the future come to life on the big screen. He saw an unfinished cut of the movie and was deeply moved. He said, "For the first time, someone has put on screen the world I carry inside my head." Philip K. Dick died shortly before the film's release, on March 2, 1982, at the age of 53 following a stroke. The world had not yet grasped the magnitude of his work, but over time, his legacy became one of the most influential in all of modern science fiction. His lifelong obsessions, identity, perception, power, consciousness, and the manipulation of reality anticipated the 21st century. Philip K. Dick redefined science fiction. He turned it into a philosophical mirror, where the question was not what awaits us in the future, but what it means to remain human. What was once seen as paranoia is now understood as foresight, an early awareness of the fragility of reality. At his funeral, a friend read one of his last notes. "The reality we see is only one version. Somewhere I'm still writing, still searching. And perhaps there, the story does have a happy ending."